Deep beneath the mountains of Korea, Dr. Hana walked through corridors that had not seen natural light in 3,000 years. She was 54 years old, with gray hair tied back in a simple bun and eyes that sparkled with intelligence. For 30 years, she had worked in these underground laboratories, continuing work that had begun long before she was born. The facility stretched for miles in every direction. It was a city in itself, home to over 10,000 scientists, engineers, and their families. Children were born here, lived here, and died here, never once seeing the sun. They knew their sacrifice was necessary. They knew they were protecting all of humanity. Dr. Hana called a young researcher named Min as she jogged to catch up. The dimensional drives are showing green across all systems. We are ready for full activation. Hana nodded, but her eyes were distant. She was thinking about her grandmother, who had also been a scientist in this facility. Her grandmother had spent her entire life working on the dimensional drive technology, knowing she would never live to see it used. 3 generations of her family had given everything to this project. My grandmother would have loved to see this day, Hana said softly. Min understood. Her own parents had worked here until they passed away. They all would have, doctor. But they are watching. I am sure of it. They reached a massive door marked with warning symbols in a dozen languages. Hana pressed her hand against the scanner, and the door slid open with a deep rumble. Beyond the door was a sight that would have made the Valari fall to their knees in shock. A ship. But not just any ship. It was over 2 kilometers long, shaped like a blade cutting through water. Its surface was covered in strange patterns that seemed to shift and move when you looked at them. These patterns were not decorations. They were dimensional stabilizers, technology that allowed the ship to slip between realities like a ghost. And this was just one ship. Through windows in the cavern walls, Hana could see dozens more, each one a masterpiece of secret engineering. Beautiful, are they not? Said a voice behind her. Hana turned to see General Tay walking toward her, his whole body supported by a simple cane. Despite his age, his eyes were sharp and his back was straight. He had commanded the secret military for 40 years, training soldiers for a war that many believed would never come. General, Hana greeted him with a bow of respect. I did not expect you here. I had to see them with my own eyes, Tay said, looking up at the massive ship. The Dawn Fleet. My grandfather helped design the first prototypes. My father oversaw the construction of the early models. And now I get to watch them fly. History will remember this day, Min said quietly. History will remember what we do with this day, Tay corrected. Ships are just metal and power. It is what we fight for that matters. Hana nodded in agreement. Then her communication device beeped. She checked it, and her expression became serious. Admiral Yuna is requesting a status report, she said. The Valari have given us 1 cycle to surrender. She wants to know if we can launch before then. Tay laughed. It was a rough, harsh sound. 1 cycle? We could launch in 1 hour if we wanted. But let them wait. Let them think we are afraid. When they see what we truly are, their shock will be even greater. In another part of the world, Captain Wu was already preparing for battle. He was 38 years old, tall and lean, with a scar running down his left cheek from a training accident years ago. He commanded the 3rd Dimensional Strike Wing, one of the most elite units in humanity's secret fleet. His ship was called the Silent Thunder. It was smaller than the massive carriers like the one Hana was inspecting, but it was fast and deadly. Built for quick strikes behind enemy lines. It could appear from nowhere, deliver devastating damage, and vanish before the enemy could respond. Captain, said his second-in-command, Lieutenant Sora, a woman with short black hair and calm, steady eyes. All crew members are at battle stations. The dimensional drive is charged and ready. Wu nodded, settling into his command chair. Around him, 50 crew members worked at their stations with practiced efficiency. They had trained for this moment their entire lives. They knew every system on the ship like they knew their own heartbeats. "What is our target?" Wu asked. "Command has designated the Valari flagship as our primary objective," Sora replied. "Once the main fleet engages, we are to jump behind enemy lines and take out Lord Vex." Wu smiled. It was a cold, predatory smile. "So they want us to cut off the head?" "Yes, sir." "Good. I have been waiting 38 years to meet a Valari in person. I want to see the look on their faces when they realize they are not the hunters." Back on the surface, the world was in chaos. Or at least, that is what it looked like to the Valari sensors watching from orbit. Cities were panicking. People were running in the streets. News channels broadcast nothing but fear and desperation. Leaders begged their citizens to remain calm, while obviously being terrified themselves, thought it was all a show. The real preparation was happening underground. The panic on the surface was a performance, carefully designed to make the Valari believe that humanity was helpless. Teams of actors and special effects experts had rehearsed this scenario for years, waiting for the day they would meet to fool an alien audience. Admiral Yuna watched the false panic on one screen while monitoring the true military buildup on another. "They are buying it completely," she said with satisfaction. "The Valari have always underestimated us," said Officer Sue. "They see what they expect to see. Weak, primitive creatures begging for mercy. That arrogance will be their downfall." Yuna turned to a communications officer. "Connect me to the underground command network." A moment later, her voice was broadcast to every hidden military facility on Earth. "This is Admiral Yuna. Protocol Dawn is now in full effect. All ships will launch in 6 hours. Ground forces will secure surface installations to receive our returning fleet. This is not a drill. This is the day we have prepared for. This is the day humanity takes its place among the stars." She paused, letting her words sink in. "For 3,000 years, we have hidden. We have waited. We have let the galaxy forget what we are. Today, we remind them. Today, we show the Valari, and every other species watching, that humanity is not prey. We are predators. And we have been starving." Across the planet, soldiers saluted screens showing the Admiral's face. Engineers made final checks on their machines. Pilots climbed into cockpits they had trained in since childhood. An entire species prepared for the war that would define their future. In her underground laboratory, Dr. Hana made one final check on the dimensional drive systems. Everything was perfect. Everything was ready. She thought about the generations of scientists who had worked on this technology, knowing they would never see it used. "For you, grandmother," she whispered. "For all of you who gave everything so that this day could come." General Tay stood in his command center, surrounded by holographic displays showing troop positions and fleet movements. He had spent his entire life training soldiers for a war against an enemy that most believed was too powerful to fight. Some had called him crazy. Some had said he was wasting resources on an impossible dream. Now, those same people stood ready to fight under his command. "Begin the awakening sequence," he ordered. Across Earth, massive machines began to rise from their hiding places. In the Pacific Ocean, islands that had seemed like natural formations for thousands of years split open to reveal hidden naval bases. Ships that had been sleeping beneath the waves rose to the surface, their hulls gleaming with advanced armor. In the deserts of Africa, the sand trembled as enormous hangar doors opened. Atmospheric fighters screamed into the sky, moving in formations so precise they looked like a single organism. In the frozen north, glaciers cracked and fell away to reveal orbital defense platforms, their weapons already targeting the Valari fleet above and deep underground. The dimensional fleet powered up its engines. The strange patterns on their hulls began to glow with blue light. Reality itself seemed to bend around them as their drives prepared to tear holes in the fabric of space. Lord Vex watched from his flagship with growing unease. Something was wrong. The humans should be begging for mercy by now. They should be offering to surrender. Instead, his sensors were detecting strange readings from all over the planet. What is happening down there? He demanded. His science officer, a tall Valari named Zix, studied the readouts with obvious confusion. I do not understand, my lord. We are detecting massive energy signatures from dozens of locations. Some of them are underground, some underwater, some in locations we believe to be empty. Are they nuclear weapons? Are they planning to destroy themselves rather than surrender? No, my lord. These signatures are different. I have never seen anything like them. Lord Vex felt that small doubt in his mind grow larger. For the first time in centuries, he wondered if he had made a mistake. Send a warning shot, he ordered. Destroy one of their smaller cities. Show them what happens when they delay. Yes, my lord. The Valari flagship turned its main cannon toward Earth. It was a massive weapon, capable of burning a hole through a small moon. Lord Vex had used it to destroy entire species. One small human city would be nothing. The cannon charged. The targeting systems locked. And then an alarm screamed through the flagship. The sky above Seoul turned dark at exactly noon. It was not clouds. It was not an eclipse. It was something far worse. Admiral Yuna stood on the observation deck of Earth Central Command and watched as thousands of alien ships blocked out the sun. She was 62 years old, and she had waited her entire life for this moment. The Valari Empire had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. They were tall creatures with silver skin and 4 arms. Their technology was ancient and powerful. They had conquered over 200 species across the stars. And for 3,000 years, they had kept humanity locked on Earth, believing humans to be too dangerous to let loose in the universe. The peace treaty had been simple. Humans would stay on Earth. They would not build warships. They would not travel beyond their moon. In exchange, the Valari would not destroy them. Most species accepted such terms with tears and broken spirits. Humanity had smiled and signed the paper. Now, 3,000 years later, the Valari had decided that even a caged humanity was too much of a threat. Admiral, said Lieutenant June, walking up behind her. He was a young man with sharp eyes and steady hands. The transmission is coming through. Yuna nodded slowly. Put it on the main screen. The observation deck's massive window flickered, and suddenly the face of a Valari commander appeared. He was enormous, even by Valari standards. His silver skin was covered in battle scars, and his 4 arms were crossed over his chest. His name was Lord Vex, Supreme Commander of the Valari Conquest Fleet. The humans of Earth, Lord Vex said, his voice booming through every speaker on the planet. For 3,000 years, we have shown you mercy. We allowed you to live when we could have erased you from existence. We gave you peace when you deserved only death. Yuna watched without expression. Around her, other officers gathered, their faces tense. But mercy has limits, Lord Vex continued. We have watched you closely. We have seen how you look at the stars. We have seen the hunger in your eyes. Even in chains, you dream of conquest. Even in cages, you sharpen your claws. The alien commander leaned forward, his 4 eyes glowing with cold hatred. Today, we end this experiment. Today, we declare war upon the human race. You have exactly 1 cycle of your planet to surrender unconditionally. If you refuse, we will burn your world to ash and scatter your bones across the void. This is not a negotiation. This is your death sentence. The transmission ended. The screen returned to showing the massive fleet above. There were at least 50,000 ships, each one capable of destroying a city in seconds. It was the largest military force the Valari had ever assembled. Silence filled the observation deck. The officers looked at each other with wide eyes. Some of them were shaking. Some of them were pale with fear. And then Admiral Yuna did something unexpected. She laughed. It started as a small chuckle, then grew into a full, genuine laugh. The kind of laugh that came from deep in the belly. The kind of laugh that soldiers made before a battle they knew they would win. "Admiral?" Lieutenant June asked, confusion on his face. Yuna turned to face her officers. Her eyes were bright with something that looked almost like joy. "Do you know what day it is, Lieutenant?" she asked. June blinked. "It is, the 15th of March, Admiral." "Yes," Yuna said, nodding. "And do you know what happened on this day, 3,000 years ago?" The young lieutenant thought for a moment. Then his eyes widened as he remembered his history lessons. "The signing of the peace treaty." "Exactly." Yuna walked to the center of the room, her boots clicking on the metal floor. 3,000 years ago, on this exact day, the Valari came to Earth with their fleet. They told us we were too dangerous. They told us we had to give up our dreams of reaching the stars. They told us to stay in our cage and be grateful we were allowed to breathe. She turned to look at the ships in the sky. And humanity agreed. We smiled. We signed their treaty. We watched them fly away, thinking they had won. But we didn't give up, did we? Lieutenant June said softly, beginning to understand. "No," Yuna said with a fierce smile. "We never gave up. We just learned to be patient." She walked to a control panel on the wall and pressed her palm against it. A small screen appeared, asking for a code. Yuna typed in a sequence of numbers that had been passed down through generations of admirals. Numbers that only 7 people on Earth knew. "For 3,000 years," she said as she typed, "every government on Earth has had one secret goal. Every scientist, every engineer, every soldier has worked toward one purpose. We built in secret. We trained in silence. We prepared for the day when the Valari would return." The screen flashed green. A message appeared. "Protocol Dawn authorized." "And now," Yuna said, turning back to her officers, "that day has finally come." Deep beneath the surface of Earth, something ancient began to wake. In bunkers hidden under mountains, under deserts, under the ocean floor, lights flickered on for the first time in centuries. Machines that had been sleeping since before anyone alive was born started to hum with power. Across the planet, secret doors opened. In Korea, a hidden entrance appeared in the side of Mount Baekdu. In Africa, the sands of the Sahara shifted to reveal a massive underground hangar. In South America, a waterfall parted to show a facility carved into the rock behind it. Humanity had never stopped building warships. They had simply built them where no one could see. General Tay received the signal in his command bunker, deep beneath Bizen. He was an old man now, nearly 80 years old, but his mind was still sharp as a blade. He had spent his entire life training for this moment. His father had trained before him, and his grandfather before that. "Protocol Dawn," he whispered, reading the message on his screen. Finally, he stood and walked to a window that looked out over an underground cavern, so large it could hold a small city. And in that cavern, row after row after row of warships sat waiting. They were not like the ships the Valari had seen 3,000 years ago. These were new. These were better. These were weapons that humanity had built in secret, using knowledge they had kept hidden from the galaxy. "Wake them up," General Tay said to his officers. "Wake them all up." The ships began to glow with blue light as their engines came online. There were thousands of them, and this was just one bunker. There were hundreds of such bunkers across the planet. Back in Seoul, Admiral Yuna watched as reports flooded in from around the world. Underground facilities were activating everywhere. Armies that had trained in secret for generations were mobilizing. Scientists were powering up weapons that the Valari could not even imagine. "Admiral," said an officer named Sue, a middle-aged woman with gray streaks in her hair, "we are receiving communications from all major military installations. Protocol Dawn is proceeding as planned." "Good," Yuna said. "And our special projects?" "Dr. Hannah reports that Project Horizon is ready," Officer Sue replied. "She says the dimensional drives are fully operational." Yuna's smile grew wider. Project Horizon was humanity's greatest secret. 3,000 years ago, when the Valari first arrived, they had scanned Earth thoroughly. They knew exactly what technology humans possessed. They made sure the peace treaty prevented humanity from developing anything more advanced. But the Valari had made a mistake. They had assumed that human science worked the same way as everyone else's. They had not understood that humans were different. Humans were creative in ways that other species could not comprehend. While the Valari watched Earth's surface, human scientists worked in hidden laboratories miles underground. They did not try to improve existing technology. Instead, they invented entirely new fields of science that the Valari did not even know existed. Dimensional travel was one such invention. The Valari used wormholes to cross the galaxy, technology they had stolen from a dead civilization millions of years ago. But humans had discovered something better. They had learned to fold space itself, to slip between dimensions like a fish swimming through water. They could appear anywhere in the universe in the blink of an eye, and the Valari had no idea. "Tell Dr. Hannah to begin preparations," Yuna ordered. "We will need the dimensional fleet ready within 6 hours." "Yes, Admiral." Above Earth, Lord Vex watched the planet with growing impatience. He had expected terror. He had expected desperate pleas for mercy. He had expected humans to react the way every other species reacted when faced with extinction. Instead, there was only silence. "My lord," said one of his officers, "we are detecting strange energy signatures from the planet's surface." Lord Vex frowned. "What kind of energy signatures?" "Unknown, my lord. Our sensors cannot identify them." This was unusual. Valari sensors could identify any known technology in the galaxy. If they could not identify something, it meant Lord Vex pushed the thought away. It was impossible. Humans had been locked on their planet for 3,000 years. They could not have developed new technology under the constant watch of Valari satellites. "It is nothing," he said firmly. "Probably just their primitive power plants overloading from fear. Continue with the invasion preparations. In one cycle, we will begin our attack." "Yes, my lord." But deep in his mind, Lord Vex felt something he had not felt in centuries. It was small, barely noticeable, but it was there. It was doubt. On Earth, Admiral Yuna stood before a holographic display showing the entire planet. Green dots appeared one by one as military installations reported ready status. In J, the Valari Empire did not take long to respond. 6 months after the destruction of Kex Prime, they assembled the largest fleet in their history. 3 million ships gathered at the edge of human-controlled space. Every species in the galaxy watched, waiting to see what would happen when the Empire unleashed its full fury on the upstart humans. Elder Prime himself came to oversee the attack. His flagship, the Eternal Dominion, was the size of a small moon. It had never been used in combat before. There had never been an enemy worthy of its power. But the humans have proven themselves worthy of destruction. "Today, we end the human threat," Elder Prime announced to his fleet. "Today, we show the galaxy what happens to those who dare challenge the Valari Empire. No mercy, no survivors. We will burn their planet to glass and scatter their ashes across the void. On Earth, Admiral Yuna watched the approaching fleet on her sensors. 3 million ships. It was more than humanity had ever faced. More than they had ever expected to face. But she was not afraid. All stations report ready status, she commanded. Orbital. Defenses online, reported General Tay from his command bunker. Dimensional. Fleet standing by, reported Captain Wu from the Silent. Thunder. Special weapons prepared, reported Dr. Hannah from her laboratory. Yuna nodded. Then she opened a channel to Commander Nari, who was leading the main human fleet. Commander, the fate of humanity rests on this battle. What do you say? Nari's voice came back strong and clear. I say let them come. We have a surprise waiting for them. The surprise was something humanity had been developing in secret for the past 3 months. After the Battle of Kex Prime, Dr. Hannah and her team had discovered something remarkable about the Volari ships they had captured. The Empire's technology, while powerful, was based on a fundamental misunderstanding of physics. They believed that space was solid, unchanging, fixed. They built their shields, their weapons, their engines all around this belief. But space was not solid. Space was fluid. Space could be bent, twisted, folded. And humans had learned how to do all of these things. The new weapon was called the Ripple. It was designed to send a wave of destabilized space through enemy formations. Any ship caught in the wave would find its systems failing, its shields collapsing, its engines tearing themselves apart. Against a few ships, it would be devastating. Against 3 million ships, packed together, it would be apocalyptic. The Volari fleet entered the solar system with thunderous confidence. 3 million ships moved in perfect formation, a wall of destruction approaching Earth. Their combined firepower could have shattered a planet. Their combined shields could have blocked the heat of a star. Elder Prime watched from his throne, his 4 eyes gleaming with anticipation. Begin the attack. Show no mercy. The Volari fleet opened fire. Billions of energy beams streaked toward Earth, toward the human defensive lines, toward the end of human civilization. And then Commander Nari gave the order. Activate the Ripple. Deep in the heart of the human fleet, a special ship called the Wave Bearer powered up its unique weapon. The device looked simple, just a large sphere of metal covered in strange patterns. But inside that sphere was a controlled tear in the fabric of reality. The sphere opened, and the universe screamed. The wave of destabilized space hit the Volari fleet like an invisible hammer. Ships that had been flying in perfect formation suddenly found themselves spinning out of control. Shields flickered and died. Engines exploded. Weapons misfired, hitting other Volari ships instead of their targets. In seconds, the organized attack became chaos. What is happening? Elder Prime demanded, gripping his throne as his flagship shook violently. What are they doing to us? Unknown, Elder. His science officer shouted back. Our systems are failing. Something is destabilizing the very space around us. The Volari had never faced anything like this. Their shields were designed to stop energy. Their armor was designed to resist physical damage. But this attack targeted the space that their ships existed in. There was no defense against it because they had never imagined such an attack was possible. Commander, Nari watched the enemy fleet tear itself apart with grim satisfaction. All ships, begin attack run. Target their command vessels first. The human fleet surged forward. They were outnumbered 100 to 1, but the Volari were in disarray. Their formations had broken. Their communications were scrambled. Their commanders were struggling just to keep their ships operational. Captain Wu led his dimensional strike wings straight into the heart of the enemy fleet. His ships flickered in and out of normal space, appearing just long enough to fire before vanishing again. It was like fighting ghosts, no, worse than ghosts. Ghosts could not kill. These shadows could. Target locked on the Eternal Dominion, Lieutenant Sora reported. Ready to fire. Wu nodded. Good. Let us show Elder Prime what human warfare looks like. The Silent Thunder appeared directly above the Valari flagship and unleashed a devastating volley of phase weapons. The shots passed through the Eternal Dominion's shields like they were not there, and struck the bridge directly. On the flagship, Elder Prime was thrown from his throne as the ceiling collapsed around him. Fires erupted across the command center. Officers screamed as control panels exploded in their faces. Impossible, Elder Prime gasped, bleeding from a wound on his head. We had 3 million ships. 3 million! How can we be losing? Another explosion rocked the flagship. Warning alarms screamed from every direction. Elder, a surviving officer shouted. We must retreat. The fleet is being destroyed. Elder Prime looked at the tactical display. Through the smoke and static, he could see the truth. The mighty Valari armada was breaking apart. Ships were exploding by the thousands. Others were fleeing in all directions, desperate to escape the chaos. In less than an hour, humanity had broken the spine of the Valari Empire. Retreat, Elder Prime ordered, his voice hollow. All ships retreat. But retreat was not easy. The human fleet pursued relentlessly. Commander Nari had divided her forces into hunting packs that chased down fleeing Valari ships. Captain Wu's dimensional wing appeared behind escape routes, cutting off thousands of vessels. The battle became a rout, and the rout became a massacre. On Earth, Admiral Yuna watched the enemy fleet crumble. She felt no joy, only a cold determination. This battle was necessary. This destruction was necessary. The Valari had to learn that humanity would not be crushed, that attacking Earth meant death. Admiral, Lieutenant June reported, his voice strained. The Valari flagship is attempting to escape. Commander Nari is requesting permission to pursue. Yuna considered for a moment. Capturing or killing Elder Prime would be a tremendous blow to the Empire. But it would also turn this war into something personal, something that could not be negotiated. Let him go, she decided. He has learned his lesson, and he will carry that lesson back to his people. In the ruins of his bridge, Elder Prime heard the human ships pull back. He watched through cracked windows as his remaining fleet limped away from the battle. Less than 50,000 ships remained operational out of 3 million. And humans had lost. Perhaps 1,000. What are they? He whispered to himself. What kind of creatures prepare for 3,000 years? What kind of species hides their true power behind a mask of weakness? What kind of monsters are these humans? He had no answers. He only knew that the Valari Empire had just lost the most important battle in its history. And he knew, with terrible certainty, that this was only the beginning. Commander Nari walked through her flagship after the battle, checking on her crew. They were tired. Many were wounded, but all of them were alive. And all of them were proud. Good work today, she told them as she passed. Your ancestors are watching. You have honored them. A young ensign named Jun stepped forward nervously. Commander, may I ask a question? Nari stopped. Of course. How did we do it? How did we fight against 3 million ships and win? It does not seem possible. Nari smiled. It was the gentle smile of a teacher explaining something to a student. Do you know the story of our species, Ensign? Humans have always been outnumbered. We have always been outmatched. When we faced predators stronger than us, we invented weapons. When we faced diseases that killed millions, we invented medicine. When we faced the cold darkness of space, we invented fire and shelter and hope. She looked out the window at the burning remains of the Valari fleet. The Valari believe that power comes from size and strength. They conquered the galaxy by being bigger and stronger than everyone else. But humans know a different truth. Power comes from the mind, from creativity, from the refusal to accept that anything is impossible. She turned back to the young ensign. We won today because we thought of things the Valari could not imagine. We invented weapons they did not know could exist. We used tactics they had never seen before. And we did all of this because that is what humans do. We adapt. We innovate. We survive. June nodded slowly, understanding beginning to dawn in his eyes. So we will keep winning? He asked. We will keep fighting, Nari corrected. Winning is never certain, but fighting is always a choice. And humanity will always choose to fight. Across the galaxy, news of the battle spread like wildfire. 3 million ships destroyed. The greatest fleet in Valari history, crushed by a single planet of creatures the Empire had dismissed as primitives. My lord, Zix shouted. Ships appearing behind our fleet. They came from nowhere. Lord Vex spun to look. The battle lasted only 4 hours. 4 hours to destroy the largest military fleet the Valari Empire had ever assembled. When it was over, the space around Earth was filled with burning wreckage. 50,000 Valari ships had come to end humanity. Less than 2,000 managed to escape. Captain Wu stood on the bridge of the Silent Thunder, watching the last of the enemy ships flee into the void. His crew was exhausted but triumphant. They had done what generations before them could only dream of doing. Should we pursue, Captain? Lieutenant Sora asked. Wu shook his head. Let them go. Let them carry the story back to the Empire. Let them tell their masters what happened here today. He smiled grimly. Fear travels faster than any ship. On the Valari flagship, Lord Vex sat in his command chair, unable to move. Around him, the bridge was in chaos. Wounded officers screamed in pain. Fires burned in several sections. Half the control panels were dark and dead. His mighty warship, pride of the Valari fleet, had been crippled in less than an hour. A human ship had appeared from nowhere, right next to him, and unleashed a devastating attack before vanishing again. Lord Vex had been thrown across the bridge. 3 of his forearms were broken. One of his eyes was damaged beyond repair. Report, he croaked. How many ships do we have left? His surviving science officer limped over to him. Zix was bleeding from a wound on his head, but he was alive. That made him one of the lucky ones. My lord, we have lost over 95% of the fleet. Only 1,700 ships remain operational enough to travel. We are retreating at maximum speed, but many of our engines are damaged. It will take us months to reach the nearest Valari outpost. Lord Vex closed his 3 working eyes. 95%. In 4 hours. Against a species they had believed to be primitive and helpless. How? He whispered. How did they hide this from us? My lord, I have been analyzing the sensor data from the battle, Zix said carefully. The human ships. They did not use any technology we recognize. Their weapons bypass our shields completely. Their engines allow them to move between dimensions. They have developed sciences that we did not even know were possible. That is impossible. We watched them for 3,000 years. We had satellites monitoring every centimeter of their planet. We would have seen them building these ships. They built them underground, my lord. Beneath mountains, beneath oceans, beneath deserts. Places our sensors could not reach. For 3,000 years, they dug deeper and deeper, creating facilities we never detected. Lord Vex felt sick. The humans had fooled them. From the very beginning, they had been playing a game that the Valari did not even know existed. The elders must be warned, he said. The Empire must know what we face. These humans, they are not what we thought they were. In her command center on Earth, Admiral Una received the reports of victory with quiet satisfaction. The first battle was won, but she knew the war was far from over. The Valari Empire stretched across half the galaxy. They had millions more ships, billions of soldiers, resources beyond counting. This battle had been won with surprise. The next ones would not be so easy. "Admiral," said Officer Sue, "we are receiving communications from other species. The Talari, the Fen, the Koroth. They all want to speak with us." Una raised an eyebrow. Interesting. 3,000 years of silence, and suddenly everyone wants to talk. They saw the battle, Admiral. They saw what we did to the Valari fleet. They want to know if we are a threat to them as well. And I think some of them want to be our friends. Una nodded slowly. She had expected this. The galaxy was full of species that lived under Valari rule. Some had been conquered. Others had surrendered without a fight. All of them had been forced to accept the Empire's dominance. But now a new power had appeared. A species that could fight the Valari and win. That changed everything. "Open communications with all of them," Una ordered. "But be careful what we reveal. Trust must be earned." In her underground laboratory, Dr. Hannah was already working on the next phase of the war. The dimensional drives had performed perfectly, but she knew they could be improved. Every advantage they had now would eventually be matched by the Valari. Humanity could not afford to stand still. "Doctor," said Young Min, carrying a stack of data tablets, "we have finished analyzing the Valari ship wreckage we collected. Their technology is interesting." Hannah took one of the tablets and studied the data. The Valari were advanced in many ways, but their technology was old. They had not invented anything new in thousands of years. They simply used the same designs over and over, making small improvements here and there. Humans were different. Humans love to create, to experiment, to fail and try again. In 3,000 years of hiding, humanity had not just matched Valari technology. They had surpassed it in ways the Empire could not comprehend. "Their shields are based on energy reflection," Hannah noted. "Interesting. No wonder our phase weapons went through them so easily. They were designed to stop energy, not matter that exists between dimensions. Can they adapt?" Min asked. "Eventually, but it will take them years to understand our science. And by then, we will have moved on to something even better." This was humanity's greatest advantage. Not their weapons or their ships, but their minds. Their endless creativity. Their refusal to accept that anything was impossible. The Valari had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years by being stronger than everyone else. They had never needed to innovate. They had never been challenged. They were about to learn what happened when they faced a species that never stopped evolving. 3 months after the Battle of Earth, the Valari Empire held an emergency council. The elders, 7 ancient beings who had ruled the Empire for millennia, gathered in their great hall to hear Lord Vex's report. Lord Vex stood before them on shaking legs. His wounds had healed, but his pride had not. He had been sent to crush a primitive species and had returned with only scraps of his fleet. In Valari culture, such failure was unforgivable. "Tell us everything," commanded Elder Prime, the oldest and most powerful of the 7. "Spare no detail." Lord Vex told them. He told them about the human ships that appeared from nowhere. He told them about weapons that ignored Valari shields. He told them about enemies who moved between dimensions like ghosts. And he told them about the look in the humans' eyes when they fought. Not desperation, but joy. As if they had been waiting for this war their entire existence. When he finished, the great hall was silent. "You are certain of this?" Elder Prime asked. "You are certain these primitives possess such technology?" "I saw it with my own eyes, Elder. 3 of my 4 eyes, at least." Lord Vex touched the patch that covered his damaged eye. The humans are not what we believed them to be. They used the 3,000 years we gave them to prepare. They built in secret. They trained in silence. And now they are ready for war. Another elder, a female named Syrah, leaned forward. But they are still only one planet. We have thousands of worlds. Millions of ships. We can simply overwhelm them with numbers, can we? Lord Vex asked. Their dimensional technology allows them to strike anywhere without warning. They can attack our supply lines, our shipyards, our homeworlds. We cannot defend everywhere at once. And every time we gather a fleet, they will know. They will appear behind us, destroy our ships, and vanish before we can respond. Elder Prime was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke words that no Valari had ever expected to hear. We may have made a terrible mistake. Back on Earth, the Human Military Council was planning its next move. Admiral Yuna sat at the head of a long table, surrounded by generals, scientists, and political leaders from every nation. We have won the first battle, she said, but we must move quickly. The Valari will be preparing a response. We cannot give them time to adapt. General Tay nodded. I agree. My recommendation is to strike at their shipyards. Without the ability to build new ships, they cannot replace their losses. That means taking the war to them, said President Lee, the elected leader of the unified Earth government. He was a middle-aged man with tired eyes but a sharp mind. We would be attacking their territory, their established defenses. Yes, Tay said simply. That is exactly what we should do. Captain Wu spoke up from his seat at the table. With respect, President Lee, the Valari expect us to defend our home. They expect us to wait for them to attack again. If we strike first, we take away their advantage. We make them react to us instead of the other way around. Dr. Hannah added her voice. I have been studying the Valari strategic maps we captured. Their empire is spread thin. They rely on their reputation to keep conquered species in line. If we show that the Valari can be beaten, that reputation crumbles. Other species might join us, Admiral Yuna said. Or at least stay neutral. Either way, it helps our cause. President Lee looked around the table. He saw determination in every face. These people had prepared for this war their entire lives. They knew the risks, and they accepted them. Then we are agreed, he said. We take the fight to the Valari. Commander Nari was chosen to lead the first strike mission. She was 45 years old, with a reputation for bold tactics and absolute fearlessness. Her fleet consisted of 200 ships, a tiny force compared to Valari number. On conquered worlds, oppressed species began to whisper. The humans had done what no one L1 year after the Great Battle of Earth. Colonel Jin stood on the bridge of the Liberation, the largest warship humanity had ever built. It was 5 kilometers long, bristling with weapons that could crack open a planet. Behind it stretched the full might of humanity's fleet 10,000 dimensional ships, carriers, destroyers, and support vessels. An armada that would have seemed impossible just a year ago. But today, Jin was not here to fight. Today, he was here to deliver a message. Colonel, said his communications officer, a woman named Era, we have established a link to the Galactic Broadcast Network. Every inhabited world in the galaxy can receive our transmission. Jin nodded slowly. This was the moment humanity had been building toward. Not just military victory, but something more important. A declaration. A statement of who they were and what they intended to do. Open the channel, he ordered. The cameras activated. Jin straightened his uniform and looked directly at the lens. He knew that billions, perhaps trillions of beings across the galaxy were watching. Valari rulers, conquered species, ancient civilizations, and young ones. All of them were about to hear humanity speak for the first time as an equal power in the galaxy. "My name is Colonel Jin of the Human Liberation Fleet," he began, his voice steady and calm. "I am speaking to every species, every world, every individual who can hear this message." He paused, letting his words settle. "For 3,000 years, humanity was locked on our home world. The Valari Empire told the galaxy that we were dangerous, that we needed to be contained. They watched us. They controlled us. They told us we would never be allowed to reach the stars." Jin's eyes hardened. They thought we would accept this. They thought we would forget our dreams. They thought that caging us would break our spirits. Behind him, through the massive bridge windows, the human fleet could be seen stretching into the distance, a reminder of what humanity had achieved in secret. They were wrong. On every world where the broadcast was received, beings stopped what they were doing to listen. Valari officers watched with growing dread. Members of conquered species watched with growing hope. And everywhere, they saw what was behind Colonel Jin, not just ships, but proof that everything they had believed about humans was a lie. "For 3,000 years we prepared," Jin continued. "We built in secret. We trained in silence. We developed technologies that the Valari could not imagine. Not because we wanted war. Not because we enjoyed destruction. We prepared because we knew, one day, we would have to fight for our freedom." You let that sink in. When the Valari declared war on us, they expected us to beg for mercy. Instead, we showed them what we had built. We destroyed their fleet. We proved that their empire is not invincible. And we showed the galaxy that there is another way. Jin took a step forward, his expression softening slightly. "But this message is not about our military power. Ships and weapons can destroy, but they cannot build a better future. That is why I am speaking to you today not as a conqueror, but as a neighbor. For 10,000 years, the Valari have ruled this galaxy through fear. They conquered. They enslaved. They crushed anyone who dared to challenge them. They told everyone that this was the only way. That strength was the only thing that mattered. That power meant taking from others." Jin shook his head. "Humanity believes in something different. We believe that true power comes from cooperation, not domination. We believe that the galaxy is big enough for all of us. We believe that together, we can achieve things that no species could achieve alone." On 100 conquered worlds, beings watched with tears in their eyes. For centuries, they had lived under Valari rule, believing that freedom was impossible. Now, for the first time, they heard someone offer them hope. "To the species of the galaxy, we offer friendship. We offer alliance. We offer the chance to build something new together. We will share our technology with those who want peace. We will defend those who cannot defend themselves. And we will never try to dominate you the way the Valari have." Jin's voice grew harder as he turned to address the Empire directly. "To the Valari Empire, we have this to say. We kept peace because we chose mercy. For 3,000 years, you thought our patience was weakness. You thought our restraint was fear. You were wrong." Behind Jin, the human fleet began to move. Ships powered up their engines, their weapons, their dimensional drives. The message was clear: humanity could strike anywhere, anytime, and there was nothing the Valari could do to stop them. "We do not want war. We never wanted war. But if you force us to fight, we will fight with everything we have. And you have already seen what we can do when we fight." Jin paused, letting the Valari understand their situation. "You have a choice. You can continue this war and watch your empire crumble. Or you can accept that the galaxy is changing and find a new way to exist within it. The choice is yours." He turned back to face the camera directly, speaking now to everyone watching. 3,000 years ago, the Valari thought they could break humanity by locking us away from the stars. Instead, they gave us time to prepare. They gave us time to learn. They gave us time to become something greater than we ever could have been without that challenge. Jin smiled. It was not a threatening smile or a triumphant one. It was the smile of someone who had seen the worst of the universe and still believed in its potential for good. In a way, we should thank them. They meant to bury us, but we grew roots. They meant to silence us, but we found our voice. And now, finally, we are ready to share what we have learned with the galaxy. He stood tall, his voice filled with conviction. Humanity is not your enemy. We are not conquerors or destroyers. We are builders, dreamers, explorers. We spent 3,000 years improving ourselves. And now we want to use that improvement to help others. To every species that has suffered under Valari rule, we see you. We hear you. And we are coming, not to dominate you, but to free you. Not to rule you, but to stand beside you as equals. This is our message to the galaxy. The old order is ending. A new era is beginning. And in this new era, no one has to be alone. No one has to be afraid. No one has to bow to tyrants. Jin raised his hand and pointed at the camera. We are humanity. We are here. And the galaxy will never be the same. The broadcast ended. Silence fell across the stars. And then, slowly, the galaxy began to respond. On the Talari homeworld, the king immediately announced his kingdom's withdrawal from the Valari Empire and requested an alliance with humanity. His people cheered in the streets, celebrating their first free day in centuries. The Koroth hive minds reached a unanimous decision. They would join the humans. Their combined computing power and human creativity would achieve wonders that neither could reach alone. The Fen warriors emerged from hiding, their secret armies finally revealed. They had been waiting for this day, for someone to strike the first blow against the Empire. Now they would strike the second blow and the third, and as many as it took. Across the galaxy, oppressed species rose up. They sabotaged Valari supply lines. They refused to follow Valari orders. They declared independence and asked humanity for support. The Valari Empire, which had stood for 10,000 years, began to crumble. Not just from military defeats, but from losing the one thing that had truly held it together, the belief that it could not be challenged on Earth. Admiral Yuna watched the reports flooding in from across the galaxy. Alliances forming, revolutions starting, an entire galactic order changing before her eyes. We did it, Lieutenant June said softly. We actually did it. Yuna nodded, but her eyes were distant. We started it. The real work is just beginning. What do you mean, Admiral? Destroying the Valari Empire is just the first step, Yuna explained. Now we have to build something better. We have to prove that our way cooperation, instead of domination, actually works. That is much harder than winning wars. She turned to face her officer. But I believe we can do it. Humans have always been good at building, at creating, at bringing people together. Now we get to do that on a galactic scale. 6 months later, the first Galactic Council met on Earth. Representatives from over 200 species gathered in a great hall built specifically for this moment. Humans sat alongside Talari, Koroth, Fen, and dozens of others. All of them equal. All of them free. Colonel Jin was there, watching from the observation gallery. Beside him stood Captain Wu, Commander Nari, Dr. Hana, and General Tay, the heroes of humanity's war for freedom, now watching the birth of something new. It is strange, Wu said quietly. I spent my whole life preparing for war. Now I do not know what to do with peace. Nari smiled. You will learn. We all will. Hana nodded. There is still so much to discover. So many mysteries to solve. So much science to explore. I think peace will be more interesting than war. Tay, The oldest of them all placed his hand on Wu's shoulder. We fought so that this could happen, so that future generations would have choices we never did. This is why we prepared for 3,000 years. Not to destroy, but to build. Below them, Admiral Yuna stood at the central podium. The eyes of 100 species watched her as she spoke. We have all come from different worlds, she said. We have different bodies, different minds, different histories. The Valari told us these differences made us enemies. That